Next is a discussion of the 2012 budget. Jeff?
You know, I've looked back over the last 8 years, and we've eliminated 1 out of every 6 municipal jobs. I think we've done that quietly. As people, we've had layoffs, we've had cutbacks, people have retired, but we haven't made a big fanfare of it. And unlike the school, who has a big budget process and a public debate, it just kind of happens. And so I don't know if people have recognized that we've done that. And I want to hats off to the employees, because despite that, I believe we still provide very high-quality municipal services, and everybody stepped up to the plate during those time frames. Also, during the last 8 years, we looked at the CPI. It's averaged 2.9% on average, and our COLA, cost of living raises, have averaged about 2.3%. So we're about 25% less than average every year. So I think we've signed fair but frugal collective bargaining agreements over that time frame, in good times and bads. Obviously, some years there were zeros, and some years there might have been some threes, but we've been below, on average, the cost of living every year for quite a length of time. Also, on health insurance, we took a look at medical trends, which have been over 12% per year, and our increases have been 6.3% and 3.3% for the last 4 years. So we've been beating the benchmark huge, and again, that's because our employees, we sit down every year, talk about health insurance, talk about how we can save both money for them and for the town, how we can save jobs, and they've stepped up to the plate. So I think both in terms of health insurance increases and wage increases, we've been, doing our best and working with our employees, and I think that doesn't get seen or recognized, but for folks that think that everybody's getting, doing grand things here, I think that we're on target. Also, people tend to want to complain, I think, about municipal pensions. I think they do need overhaul. I know that the legislature started that last year and will continue, but recognize that the pension system was started in 1937 in Massachusetts. We don't make any of the rules, the regulations. Employees have to belong. Does it need to be fixed? Yes, but I think to blame local employees for those is not, for what happened in 1937 is just not fair. And I'm sure the legislature will continue to try to make that more affordable and fairer as well. So I think on the big issues, we've done pretty well. Our staffing level's down, our wages have been frugal, our health insurance costs have been very, very conservative, and we've gotten a pretty good bang for the buck. And again, thanks to everybody that has helped out over the years. In fiscal 11 this year, 7 of our 9 unions have already agreed to a 1-year contract with no pay raises. That wasn't, they recognize that these are difficult times. They recognize that the town is struggling financially, and we were able to settle those 7 of 9 in between 0 and 2 meetings. In some cases, it was simply a phone call. In other cases, we sat down and explained the situation, and I want to, again, thank all of those folks. I'm still hopeful we'll get a firefighter's contract. It is 3.5 years old, but maybe we can work that out. But again, stepping up to the plate during tough times. So what does fiscal 12 look like? Well, for those who say, here we go again, you're right. We're going to present a balanced budget. People say, why can't the town balance the budget? We balance the budget every year. We balanced the budget for a couple hundred years. Why can't we live within our means? We always live within our means. That's the law. The issue is that we always have a gap between revenues that are available and services that are provided. And that's why we have 50 less employees than we had 8 years ago, and that's why the schools made cutbacks as well, because in order to make ends meet, we have to make change. So not only have we reduced jobs, but I think this body knows we've consolidated town and school services, looked to share services with other towns, and look at any venue possible to make the system work and provide high-quality municipal services, because that's all we do, serve the public. And so we are going to have a revenue gap. We lost in the last 2 years about $3.8 million in state aid in the last couple of years, and I think you just heard the senator that fiscal 12 is not going to be very healthy for the state. In talking to everybody I know, they're all talking about the $2 to $2.5 billion shortfall. because of the use of one-time money, and the state faces Medicaid or Medicare increased costs every year. So that puts us more at risk for more cuts in state aid, and we've been over-relying on state aid for a long time. That was a good thing when times were good, and thank you, Jimmy Valley, and everybody for that, but these are tough times, so I think we have a potential of state aid cut again. The schools have balanced this budget on about $2.5 million of net of one-time money from the federal and state and all those stimulus packages, and that money won't be available. I don't think we're going to be able to hold the line on health insurance like we have in the past. Eventually catches up with you. The school has special ed costs that continue to rise, and those are mandated by law. I think when you take all the other factors, that we're $4 to $6 million, we'll have a gap of between $4 and $6 million for next fiscal year. And that really, we'll know more when the governor's budget comes out in February, but if you look at the one-time fixed costs that won't be there, if you look at the other fixed costs that are gonna go up, I think that creates that gap. And so what I've asked is each department to have a budget ready to me by Thanksgiving on the municipal side, and I've asked the school if they could speed up their budget process. So with the hope that come early February, when we have all the information and we have the actual dollars, and whether it's 3.8, 5.6, whatever those numbers are, we'll be in a position to present a balanced budget, and that's going to obviously have some policy decisions on the council's part as to priorities, because $1 million is 20 jobs, and so you can do the math. Is it 60 jobs, 80 jobs? In the sense that and I think everybody knows this, the vast majority of money goes to wage and benefits. Our expense budgets are pretty small. They've been cut and cut and cut over the years. So we will have a challenge. We will meet that challenge. But I let the unions know today. I want to let you and the public know. We got a big challenge ahead, and we'll do our best to continue to serve the citizens with whatever funding that is available. So just want to let the council know that, the community know that, and can answer any questions. Again, it's a best guess based on what I'm hearing from across the Commonwealth, what I know internally here, and we'll have a real number early February.
The projected deficit at $4 to $6 million. Can you elaborate on what factors will impact whether or not it's 4 or 6? And for instance, is it whether or not state aid is cut? I think,
well, yeah, state aid cut 0. Is it cut 1.9 million? Do we continue on the 2-year average? So I mean, that's an unknown at this point. I think it's going to get cut.
No, I do too. But so if it doesn't get cut, do you expect the deficit to still be $4 million?
Yes.
Okay.
And I said, well, the school's 2.5 right out of the bat. Okay, the 2.5 short right today. Sure. Round numbers. I do think health insurance is going to be a struggle. Right. We have an $8 million health insurance budget, so a 10% increase is $800,000, and 8% is So I think that we're not going to be able to maintain our 3.3% because we're running out of options on how many changes we can make. So I think there's exposure in health insurance. I think special ed's always exposed. That's 20% of the school budget, and those outside services seem to keep going up and up and up. So even at 4% of $10 million is $400,000. So you can see easily that you go from 2.5 to 3.5 on the expense side, and nothing else has changed. The pensions haven't changed, other costs haven't changed. So you get to $4 million pretty easy. We do get a built-in tax increase of about $1 million a year. But if state aid gets cut $2 million, you go from 4 to 5 million. If state aid gets cut $1 million, it's 4 million. But the other thing that we're looking at is people still aren't buying new cars. Excise tax. Our interest income is down to almost 0. It was 900,000 4 years ago. We used to build 50, 60 houses a year. That's not happening. A lot of people doing additions and those kind of things. But those other local receipts aren't. And those are all purely based on the economy, are just not coming in as they were in the past. So you have local, so the only thing that we know is the property tax can go up 2.5%. On 50 million bucks, that's $1 million in round numbers. We know that local receipts are probably gonna go down again. And so the big unknown is how much is the state aid gonna get reduced?
Right.
So that's why I'm trying to give you
Sure.
a window.
So, for this current year, our state aid was cut 4% across the board, and that was in parallel with how much of a state deficit? Do you remember?
You had a couple billion yourself.
2 billion.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we're looking at 2 billion again this year, so.
But they don't have the same rainy day accounts,
Right,
and they didn't have the federal, you know, the federal stimulus also helped the state government.
all right,
And so all those are coming to an end.
right, so,
$2 billion in
pardon?
reserves. We had over $2 billion in reserves.
Right, so it would be reasonable to assume that we're looking at least a 4% cut again in state aid.
Yeah, whether,
Right.
is it 3, is it 5, I don't, you know,
Okay.
you know, I don't know what's going on. All I know is you talk to the taxpayers, you talk to MMA, you talk to elected officials up there. No one's saying, don't, you know, well, don't worry about local aid,
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
That the state's been.
Well, that
cutting-
was up until yesterday. Now they'll say, you gotta worry about local aid.
Well,
Um,
I can't speak for that, but I can just say, you know, they've already hit higher
Sure.
ed, they've hit a lot of things.
All right,
The worst-case scenario, $6 million, how many town employees are we looking at roughly?
But I mean, if it's 20 per million, it's 5 million, that's 100, could it be 80 or 120? Now, remember, that's jobs. And one of the things people criticize is that even when the economy's roaring, the school lays off people every single year because they do not renew certain positions. Okay, so, and when the economy's roaring, the school still has layoffs. So, you know, the people get confused between that and elimination of positions. And Matt knows he was on the school committee. So I'm just saying that if we don't have, if we're 5 million short, it might be more than that because some people don't get renewed anyway, separate and apart from not having enough money. And that would go to unemployment costs. But, you know, you could have 60 jobs, 70 jobs. I don't, unless something, a magic bullet shows up, it's a very serious situation.
Because
An override's not going to pass in this town. And so as you're preparing these budgets, I think absolutely everything has to be on the table. That would include the library and closing that down, the senior center, either reduced or closing it down, police, fire station, DPW, plowing. I wonder if we should question how much we actually plow in terms of saving money there. But I'm not going to be in favor of stabilization spending on any of these. If the voters don't want to support overrides, you know, the time has come where these cuts have to kick in, and that means everybody, seniors down to the youngest of this town, are going to have to be subject to these cuts. So that would be my inclination. Thanks.
When I was elected chairman last year, I vowed that as long as this town found itself in a deficit budget situation, I would ask the council to vote for an override. And being that that's clearly going to be the case this year, just so there are no surprises, and I know the cynics and naysayers are saying, here we go again, when the time comes, I will be asking the council to put an override on a ballot.